China this week made a big step. It said that couples could have as many as 3 children rather than 2, really as part of its ongoing effort to maintain historic competition with the United States in the economy as it tries to have its economy overtake that of the United States. We are joined now by economic historian Niall Ferguson, who is the author of a new book, brand new book, Doom, The Politics of Catastrophe. Also, of course, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. So, Niall, thank you so much for being back with us. You've looked in your book through history at various catastrophes, and as important, how the human race has responded to those catastrophes. Let's look at the most recent one, the pandemic, and contrast, if you will, China versus the United States. How did we handle it differently? How did we handle it the same? Who did it better?
Well, throughout history, catastrophes are a kind of moment of revelation. You find out what a system is made of, how resilient the society is. And COVID's been no exception. Last year, a lot of people jumped to the conclusion that China had somehow aced this and the United States had completely screwed up. And it certainly looked a little like that because the Chinese were able to bring the spread of the pandemic under control. It never really went exponential beyond the province of Hubei. And we, of course, are on our way to 600,000 deaths. And it appeared as if we simply couldn't contain the spread, even with lockdowns. But, you know, I couldn't help feeling last year that this was probably a premature judgment. And that we were maybe missing the fundamental vulnerabilities that the pandemic exposed in China and some of the strengths that the United States still has. And I'll give you just 2 quick examples. Let's not forget, this thing began in China. We thought of it as a natural disaster. It increasingly looks man-made, though we can't be certain if this was a lab leak in Wuhan. It seems plausible, even if it wasn't. Only in a one-party communist dictatorship would it have been possible to hush up the facts of human-to-human spread in the way that happened in December 2019 into January 2020. In a democracy, the press would have reported on this, and there never would have been such a huge pandemic. Remember, for weeks, this virus was traveling as the Chinese Lunar New Year approached all over the world, including directly on flights from Wuhan to San Francisco and New York. The second point is, although we tend to start badly in a crisis, remember Pearl Harbor, the United States has a remarkable capacity for self-repair. And although things went very badly wrong last year, and I don't deny all kinds of mistakes were made, on the most important thing you can do in a pandemic, which is developing really efficacious vaccines, the US, and broadly speaking, the West, did much, much better than China.
So, Niall, we heard from President Biden, his first press conference, actually, saying that ultimately he regards this as a battle, was the word he used, between democracies and autocracies in the 21st century. Take what you've just said here. It was thought for some time China had the advantage because it was so centralized. It could get its people to do things the United States couldn't. Look at the United States. We had states really disagreeing about how to handle it, a lot of back and forth. Do we have any sense about whether the United States needs to be more centralized? Because the Biden administration right now is moving, I think it's fair to say, towards centralization, certainly in economic policy.
Well, I half agree with Joe Biden. I agree that we are in a fundamental struggle against a totalitarian, not just authoritarian, but totalitarian state. The Chinese Communist Party in many ways runs China much the same way that the Soviet Communist Party ran the Soviet Union. They have a different economic strategy. The politics is the same. The ideology is the same. The repression is the same. The labor camps for minorities are remarkably similar. So I agree that we're in something that looks quite a lot like Cold War II. And I think it already was going that way before the pandemic struck. The pandemic revealed some things about the Chinese regime that many people had been in denial about. But I don't wholly agree with Joe Biden that the way to go is to copy what China does. It's very striking that plan features in all the major legislation that the Biden administration is bringing forward. We've got 3 big multi-year plans. Remind you of anything? It's also interesting that the Biden administration seems to be looking over its shoulder and saying, the Chinese are doing a central bank digital currency, shouldn't we? And I also think, and this is a really important point, David, that last year we made a mistake. We thought that we needed to copy the Chinese style of lockdown after the virus had really spread through to every state. But we were looking at the wrong China. The China that really did the best last year was Taiwan, the Republic of China, which is a democracy, has great protections for individual rights, nevertheless was able to contain the spread of COVID until a very recent outbreak. But last year, basically, they completely contained it without lockdowns. So I think we made a great mistake, and we're still making it. We think we have to copy China, but no. Democracy has great strengths that a centralized one-party state lacks. And one of the really great lessons of the 20th century, and it was true in both World War II and the Cold War, is you mustn't become your enemy in attempting to compete with your enemy, because that is not victory. If you become a centralized state without the individual liberties that are crucial to democracy, what kind of a victory is that? Some
people are saying the Biden approach to infrastructure is flawed because it is top down, it is federal, and you need it really originating from the localities that know what they need. In infrastructure, do we need to go more central?
I think we need to address our frailties, and I've been talking about our degeneration in these respects for many years, but not by becoming China. Rather, we have to recognize that we've created an excessively complex regulatory system that stands in the way of local and state initiatives that everybody on the ground knows are necessary. But good luck dealing, to take just another Californian example, with the problem of wildfires, because the regulations on the environment make it impossible to do controlled burns. So I don't think we need to learn from China. I think we need to learn from America.
And finally, Niall, this is Bloomberg and this is Wall Street Week. So let's say, as an investor, let's assume you're going to invest in China versus the United States over the next 10 years. Given everything you've said, everything you know about these two regimes, which is a better bet and a better investment over the next 10 years?
Well, I'm an economic historian. I take the long view, and you'd be mad to bet against the United States. You'd also be mad to bet on a totalitarian, highly centralized regime in a networked age. Let me put it really simply. Most of America understands that it's heading for Cold War. The part of America that doesn't get this is Wall Street. Money's pouring into Chinese bonds and stocks, especially tech stocks. Guys, I have bad news for you. They have capital controls. It's the Hotel California China style. You may be able to check in, but good luck checking out. So I think this is a really important long bet that Wall Street is making that is going to go very sour. And it could go sour too if there's a blow up between the US and China over Taiwan.